Hello and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. Today's going to be another episode of the Q&A, so as always, if you have any questions, if you would leave them in the comments, I'll be able to get to them, and that will all be good. Now, one little note before we kick off the show in earnest. I've recently done a live stream, and I'm not exactly sure when this video is going to go up, but well, it's Sunday now, and I did the live stream yesterday and Saturday, and we got 220-something people in. It was crazy. I had a great time, so I'm going to take this opportunity to pimp my twitch.tv live stream. You can go over there and hit the follow button, and then whenever I start streaming, you'll see an email in your account. You can go join in. It's usually a great time. It ends up being a semi-Q&A, semi-just me fucking about, and a lot of us having fun in WoW. And then hopefully in the future I will find out some sort of way of doing LFRs and flexes with the people who are reviewing. So, just a quick little plug for Twitch. Now, let's move into what you're actually here for, and that is the Q&A. The first question is from ZP82, who said, how do you think Hearthstone's success will bring in new blood into the Blizzard community? Will it have an impact on World of Warcraft subscribers? A very interesting question. Now, here's the thing with Hearthstone. Right now, I think that most of its fanbase are World of Warcraft players, or at least have been at some point. Remember that statistic we got a while back, that 100 million people have played World of Warcraft and subscribed at some point? Well, that's a lot of gamers, and I think it's a lot of those people who are being enticed back in. In terms of new blood and people who are 100% new to the Blizzard games, well, to them, Hearthstone's really just another card game, and sure, it might be very well polished and that kind of thing, but I'm just not particularly sure that it will have a ginormous effect. It will certainly cause a massive uptick in the amount of people playing Blizzard games, that's for certain. In terms of World of Warcraft subscribers, I'm not exactly sure. I don't think the Hearthsteed mount will be of much interest to people who are playing Hearthstone only. So, subscribers-wise, I don't think so. Plus, it would also, Hearthstone's a free-to-play game, so it would be a bit weird if a free-to-play was actually having much of an effect on a pay-to-play game, because it is that free feature that attracts so many people to Hearthstone. Still though, the game has been a fantastic success. I, time to time, really do have a great lot of fun with it, so hopefully things keep on being successful in Hearthstone. Okay, next we have a question from Magtheridon Apocalypse, who said, do you see Vol'jin and Rastakhan having a face-to-face meeting at some point? And then he also said, do you think the troll tribes will have a bigger respect for the Horde now that they follow a troll? Do you maybe see other troll tribes joining into the Horde and kind of replacing some of the heavy orc losses that we got in Siege of Orgrimmar? Okay, so I think that a face-down between Vol'jin and Rastakhan would make a pretty damn cool patch experience. They are two very big characters, and if you don't know, Rastakhan, I believe, is the leader of the Zalandari trolls. Massive lore character. We haven't really seen him in-game, but I think that would be pretty damn epic. Now, I'm not too sure if it should be the main raid of a new patch. I guess WoW has been kind of infamous for just throwing in a random troll raid, so I'm not sure exactly how they would do that, but perhaps in maybe the South Seas expansion that we would get in Azothin, they could have some stuff with Rastakhan, because after all, the Zalandari are an island race of trolls. So it would make sense that we could maybe invade their island, and that could lead to some exposition between Vol'jin and Rastakhan. I think that would be the best way to do it. As for some of the other troll tribes having a greater respect for the Horde, I think you're absolutely right, they will. The orcish sort of, well, the uprising against the orcs was extremely hard. The Kor'kron were they were elite troops, really. And all in all, the trolls won, so yes, I'd say they would command a lot more respect amongst the other tribes, and I could definitely see other troll tribes defecting to the Horde. Would that be replacing losses that were in Siege of Orgrimmar? I suppose so, but I really think it would be more of a respect thing. I think that overall there could be a cool storyline in there somewhere, with trolls joining the Horde after seeing a newfound respect for them, and then perhaps that would involve maybe some defections from Rastakhan's forces. I think that could be kind of cool. Alright, next we have another question from Aaron van der Koppel, I think? Van der Koppel, I think, something like that. Anyway, he said, since returning to niche healing has been mentioned in Warlords of Draenor, do you think Blizzard will do anything similar to with the other classes and rules? For an example, say a single target tank versus a multiple target tank, or a static versus dynamic DPS. Thank you, and keep up the great work. Well, first of all, thanks, and I think that they may do this in some instances. It won't be massive, though. and it would probably just expand on some things that are already prevalent in classes. We do currently have some tanks that are a bit better at AoE than others. Maybe those differences will be exaggerated, but not to the point where one tank won't be able to do one role. I don't think it would be a good idea if they went back to one tank being good at multi-target only and just being bad at single target. I just don't think that would be for the good of the current game. So I think that more differences amongst classes are fantastic, and I hope they do that, but I don't want them to do it to the point where it really just kind of makes classes ultra niche to the point where they're not useful in the majority of encounters. As for DPS, I think, yeah, static versus dynamic DPS is an interesting enough kind of argument, and it will happen. They are cutting down on movement, and just as an example, hunters will be doing, so comparatively, already we do less damage overall than some classes, but the thing that makes up for that is the fact that we're extremely mobile, and the hunter's niche in Warlords of Draenor is apparently going to be its mobility. And that means we won't do as much damage in straight single target standstill fights. What it does mean is that we do have a bit of a unique strength in comparison to some other classes. And then of course for, say, melee classes, that'll also be the same. But then you'll have classes like, say, an Arcane Mage, who don't do particularly well while moving, but when they're standing still, they're just shredding things. So I think that the current little kind of kinks and tweaks and things, whatever, that we have at the minute, will just be emphasized a little bit more. I think right now the most, different single spec is probably the Shadow Priest, because it's so good at multi-dotting and comparatively not so good at single target. Anyway, so that's my thought on that. Next, we have a question from Jammin Keys, who said, how do you think gearing specifically secondary stats will play out in Warlords? Well, he did say a few other things, but I just need to cut the question down because it was pretty long. He said, though, that in theory, it should be possible to have a greater diversity of viable builds in Warlords that are based around playstyle preference rather than raw performance. Do I think that Blizzard can realistically pull this off, or will we have mandatory builds for each spec based on the maths? Okay, so I think that we will have mandatory builds for each spec based on maths for AoE and then for single target, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be something that is mathematically superior when you are dealing with numbers. That's just the way that things are. So, I suppose, will it be based around your own personal playstyle? Perhaps not, but maybe you'll just end up being slightly better at multi-target if you have a lot of multi-strike, or something like that. Of course, I have no idea how it's actually going to play out, because we aren't even in the beta yet. But overall, I think the diversity should be good, and these two new extra stats will certainly add a little bit more in terms of interesting things. For an example, maybe you really like Amplify, maybe you just really want your class cooldowns to come off a little bit quicker. In that case, you could stack Amplify, if that really is what you find to be the most fun to play. So I think there is definitely a lot more room for personal preferences, but at the top end, there will always be a min-max solution, because that is just the nature of min-max. I suppose the hope is that the min-max DPS is not greatly different from just the median DPS in terms of the effects that specific secondary stats have on them. Okay, so next we have a question from 9-inch Narwhals, who said, do I think there is any chance of Medivh returning? He is, in my opinion, one of the coolest characters in lore, and it's a shame that we've had so little of him, beside the Karazhan chess thingy and the Caverns of Time. So I think that absolutely there is room for Medivh to come back. He's a very powerful character, so they could bring him back. How they would do that, I am not sure. He could be a part of a story, maybe at the end of Warlords of Draenor he flies in, fixes some sort of space-time anomaly, fucks something up, and then the Legion come. I don't know, but I was just joking, by the way, that's probably not going to happen. But seriously though, I think they can bring this guy back, and his character is just so powerful in terms of his abilities and things like that, that they will find a way to bring him back if they think they can make a good story with him. There is a chance, though, that he could end up being a little bit like Madonna and just being a character that they don't want to put into the in-game lore. As for Madonna, well, Madonna is actually a terrible character. He suffers a little bit from Superman syndrome, in that Madonna's got the powers of a druid, a shaman, a mage, and I think one or two other casters. He's basically okay, he's not invincible, but he's just so absurdly powerful that you can't have the players, like us, do anything interesting when Medivh is involved, or Madonna is involved, because Madonna's so powerful, why the hell does he need us? Unless they plan on just making enemies so absurdly powerful that it just gets ridiculous. So I think Madonna probably won't come back. Medivh is still, like, he's not powerful enough to have the Superman effect, so they can bring him back. If you don't know what I mean by the Superman effect, well, basically, Superman is so powerful of a hero. He can do anything. He's just so damn good, apart from Kryptonite, that really, to make any interesting story happen with Superman, they have to escalate the odds to a truly absurd level in terms of the enemy's power, and it just doesn't really work that well as a character. If you look at something like Spider-Man, okay, he can web sling, and he's not some sort of super person that can shoot lasers and fly and do absurd things. If you look at Batman, he's just a regular guy with a lot of technology. So I think that the Superman effect is the reason why Madonna won't come back, but Medivh perhaps could. Alright, we have one more question. It's from Iggerston. He said, would it be possible that Gill Mace could rise again in Warlords of Draenor? And because King Gen Greymane said that it would once rise again, and it would be a pretty awesome specific racial quest line to take Gill Mace back as a Worgen. Well, honestly, it's a really cool story, and I don't think I'd limit it to just being a Worgen. If you think about it, a lot of people, even say undeads, played that Silverpine quest, so seeing an end to that would be nice. Really, it's bizarre, the Worgen quest line and story just dropped so quickly, and I think that was one of the major missed opportunities of Cataclysm, because the actual Worgen fights against the undead when you're playing as either an undead character or a Worgen character were both very enjoyable, and they never tied that off. So I think absolutely there should be a quest line, and I think it's so cool that they shouldn't make it a racial one, because I think everyone should be able to play it. At the end of the day, it does make sense, because if you're an Alliance person, you want to help the Worgen, because they're a part of, they're in your fold. So I think that's how that would happen. And yes, hopefully they do a quest like that. As for when they do a quest like that, well, damn, I'm not sure. There's not really much of an opportunity to do it in Warlords of Draenor, honestly. Just the nature of the expansion, it wouldn't fit. So perhaps the expansion after that, I think that would be the most sensible place to put it. And then finally, we are going to take a short little question from Calorian0639, who said, hey, do you think we'll be able to make some brown orcs in Warlords of Draenor? That's an interesting one. So, they've said, well, based on the most recent information anyway, it's possible that it may happen, but we don't know exactly. They said that they are taking into account player feedback about character customizability. Technically, though, brown orcs only come from Draenor, and brown orcs are uncorrupted. Historically, the only brown orcs that we found are the Mag'har tribe on Outland, so if you were going to roleplay it, then sure, you could make a brown orc as a playable character, just that you come from Outlands and Aground from the Mag'har tribe. That would make sense. So I think that absolutely that's the lore reason to allow players to make a brown orc, and it should absolutely be allowed because of that. So, yeah, as for whether I think we will be able to, it's up in the air. They've said they may do stuff like that, but no final kind of things. The reason why the orc female that they showed off was brown is because it was a Warlords of Draenor model, therefore it had to apply to the Warlords orcs. But honestly, if they're making that brown orc model, I think they should just let players have it, because, you know what? Mag'har tribe exists, therefore it can be done. And the same goes for a lot of other racial things. At sometime I'll probably just put out a big video about sub-races and I'll go through some ideas that people have had. Anyway, that is it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. In terms of things that I want to pimp before we end, there is my Patreon page, there is my twitch.tv stream, you'll find all those links in the description of the video, then Twitter's a great place, we can have a chat there. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.